Part 87. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 864. Greet's paper took 2 full days just to write. In addition to the relationship between the number of passengers/tonnage, the mortality rate, and the mortality rate of various diseases, he also made statistics on a lot of things. The relationship between the mortality rate of various diseases and the sailing season. Mortality rates of various diseases and their relationship with departure/arrival locations. The relationship between the death time of various diseases and the number of sailing days. Finally, it was proved that the gastrointestinal infection with the highest incidence rate was closely related to personnel density, closely related to the number of sailing days, slightly related to the sailing season, and almost not related to the departure location/arrival location. Scurvy, which has the second highest incidence rate, is most closely related to the number of sailing days and less related to other factors. So, the previously estimated method can reduce the mortality rate as much as possible. Are there any other methods, or are there any methods that have been commonly used in current large-scale passenger transportation? Gretel closed the draft of his paper. You can't create a good solution just by working behind closed doors. Public health science is an empirical discipline that requires field work, so, where to begin? Greet went through his personal network, got up and went out, going to the 3rd Fleet Station. In the last major battle that defeated the Treasure Fleet, the Parliamentary Fleet had carried a large number of people. They have experience. The entire station was busy, making preparations for the voyage. But seeing him coming, Fleet Logistics Chief William Gunson still received him warmly. Carrying sailors and soldiers in large numbers? We have experience with this. Well, in general, the total number of sailors and soldiers on a small ship under 200 tons cannot be more than 300, for a large ship over 200 tons, the total number of sailors and soldiers cannot be more than 1 person per ton. He talked eloquently, his face filled with the pride that naturally arises when asked about his major. If you are carrying war horses, war beasts, or barbarians, there will be special adjustment algorithms. This is more complicated. I won't go into details. No need to explain it carefully, Gret nodded. I just want to ask, what is the mortality rate when you transport soldiers on a large scale? Is it 10%? Is it 5%? 5%, William Gunson almost jumped up, as if he had heard something terrible, and as if his professionalism had been greatly insulted. You are kidding. When transporting soldiers, especially barbarian soldiers, 5 out of 100 will die. This is absolutely impossible to accept. At most 2. Not because of fighting, purely in transportation, 100 at most 2. If the passenger/tonnage ratio reaches 1, the fatality rate is kept at 2%. How is this done? Gretel sincerely asked the senior for advice. William Gunson also knew everything and said it all. Those soldiers are not prisoners. Even if they are in the army, as long as the weather is good, the ship is not rocking, and there are no big waves, they must be allowed to go on the deck at a fixed time every day to do activities. Carry water, help scrub the deck, scrub the cabin, in short, don't do it all the time, hold it in the bottom cabin. Go on deck regularly to breathe fresh air and keep the cabin clean. Gretel silently wrote down these items. He asked tentatively. What if you are not allowed to leave the hold? What if, you are really a prisoner, for example, a prisoner of war? Prisoners of war don't have to be locked up forever. General Gunson disagreed. At the very least, they have to empty the dung bucket themselves, right? Do they have to carry the food themselves? Otherwise, who will serve them? Of course, there must be some people who want to cause trouble, so the mortality rate is higher than ordinary people, but as long as if it doesn't go too far, it won't exceed 5%. By the way, whether they are soldiers or prisoners of war, They are at least level 1 warriors, right? Of course. The physique of a level 1 warrior is already much stronger than that of an ordinary person. Disaster victims and refugees can be said to be the weakest among ordinary civilians. Gretel secretly noted this. With a strong body, exogenous infections are less likely to break through the immune barrier and cause epidemics. He asked seriously. So, what about the large-scale transfer of poor people? For example, the victims of this disaster? Take care of them. Chief Gunson suppressed his smile and replied seriously. The fleet has also received the task of transporting some civilians. In general, treating them as human beings, not depriving them of food, putting them on the deck regularly, and treating those who are sick as much as possible, or at least moving them to separate cabins will also greatly reduce the cost of transportation. Mortality rate. How low can it go? 7%? 8%? Chief Gunson hesitated slightly. The first batch of fleets has just set off, and it is still early to return. I only estimate based on experience in previous years. In short, our fleet will definitely have fewer deaths than merchant ships when transporting people. Greet breathed a sigh of relief, asked some related questions about cost and assessment, and said goodbye to him. Returned to the Mage Tower, supplemented some information and discussion, and submitted it to the review committee. To sum up, the mortality rate during transportation can be effectively reduced through the following methods. The review committee member of Black Crow Swamp looked at the paper and whispered. This is the only time he is particularly unlike a person from Black Crow Swamp. All he can think about is saving people. He is happy if one less person dies. Next to him, 2 committee members from the Evocation School and the medical branch of the Conjuration School coughed at the same time. First, before boarding the ship, the victims will be pre-screened and temporarily detained if they are suffering from the disease. This screening can be carried out while waiting in line to board the ship. The healer will check whether there are abnormal symptoms such as fever, diarrhea, etc. Cooperate with fortune observation technique to check. Second, when delivering disaster victims to the carrier, the number of people must be strictly controlled and shall not exceed 0.9 times the tonnage. At the same time, the carrier is prohibited from carrying large quantities of goods to leave enough space for the victims. Third, the carrier is required to set aside isolation space and conduct regular health checks for disaster victims. If there are any abnormalities, they should be isolated in time. Fourth, regularly distribute medicines to cure sea plague. Fifth, implement a reasonable incentive mechanism. It seems quite reasonable. The review member of the medical branch rubbed his nose and sneezed slightly. It doesn't cost much. If the death rate can be reduced to less than 5%, it will save a lot of manpower for developing colonies. As for the incentive mechanism, what is the best way to do it? The abominable mage Nordmark simply skipped over the details of this proposal by saying I'm not familiar with economic practices and threw them all to the parliament. You have the ability to write a paper, you have the ability to write in detail. Bonus. If the death rate is less than 5%, special rewards will be given to the captain and ship's doctor. Deduct money. If there are too many deaths, the council will directly fine you and disqualify the next carrier. Half of the freight is paid by the receiving place. The more people who arrive safely, the more freight they get, and it rises in a step-by-step manner. The magicians began to discuss each other word by word. Gretel, on the other hand, has already invested in a new research direction. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Hua Ying Shuiyu for the 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 865. Gretel has always had a very clear self-understanding of his own level. In addition to standing on the shoulders of his predecessors in clinical medicine, he is still exploring how extraordinary energy flows in the body, how to combine medicine and magic, and how to treat the damage caused by some magic. In the area of public health, he just couldn't stand the sight of the poor dying, so he bit the bullet and got involved. Oak Grove Hospital relied on technology to keep it from running out of money and falling into bankruptcy. As for politics, economy, business, are you kidding? He knows nothing about these things. Allowing him to formulate these business policies will definitely break some kind of business balance, or it will allow those businessmen to take advantage of loopholes and cause countless tragedies. Forget it, let's leave it to the big guys. At the very least, even if the parliament does not have business talents, they live longer, see more, and can find more helpers. Professional matters should be left to professionals. Gretel returned to his own realm. Performing surgeries, doing research, exercising mental strength, exercising physical strength. Speaking of the electric ball game box of whack-a-mole given by the teacher, he only got to the 4th level, and there has been no progress since then. I still can't get through the 5th level, but after the 5th level, there are still 5 levels. Of course, the premise is that those gems should not be arranged and combined to create more levels. Physical training isn't much better. As the saying goes, if you don't practice for 1 day, you will know it, if you don't practice for 2 days, your opponents will know it, and if you don't practice for 3 days, the whole world will know it. He went to Ioland Island and didn't insist on training for a month, and it was already a mess. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Greet carried the newly adjusted weight-bearing clothing and ran desperately on the training ground. After advancing to a 3rd level warrior, he performed surgery on the knight and he was able to move steadily. However, operating on knights above level 10. I guess you'll have to wait until you advance to level 4 or become a knight of level 10 or above before you can cut it. Old Morgan put his one arm behind his back and gritted his teeth as he watched Gretel put on the barbarian power belt, attached advanced demonic weapon to the scalpel, and then threw touch of tiredness on one of the monster's hind legs. Ground cutting, light comments. As for me, I probably have to wait until you advance to become a knight. You may not be able to become an advanced knight, Gretel finished a lap, holding his knees, panting and wiping sweat. I still need to think of other ways. Definitely have to think of other ways. The treatment of pectus excavatum combined with scoliosis is still in the animal experimental stage for the time being. The animal model needs to wait for it to grow slowly, and the follow-up reaction of the operation needs to be observed slowly, and there is no rush. As for the warriors and knights he can do, he has almost finished it. If he wants to be a higher level patient, he must either raise his warrior level or find another way around. In other words, if the muscles cannot be stretched, use muscle relaxation. If there is no muscle relaxation in the magic world, use the reduced version of touch of fatigue instead. The bone cannot be cut and the ranger cannot be used, what should I do? Greet asked many people for advice on this issue. Archmage Edgar of Black Crow Swamp has always regarded him more seriously than his own disciple Lin En. When he saw him asking, he answered readily. If it can't be cut, use a saw. The saw is mixed with fine gold and is equipped with a high-level demonized weapon. 2 golden skeletons are sawing on the left and right. There is nothing that can't be cut. If it's not enough, use negative energy. Corrosion. Well. Greet thanked and left. Returned to the Mage Tower and tried this method to perform an orthopedic surgery. Is it effective? It cannot be said to be a magical rejuvenation. It can only be said to be a life-saving medicine. Pull the big saw, pull the big saw. Saw blades flew and bone dust flew everywhere. Looking at it, even if the demon pig's leg bone is successfully healed, it will still be missing a big part. As for negative energy, when a ball of negative energy goes down, not only the bones, but also the peripheral fascia, internal blood vessels, and nerves, visible to the naked eye, all begin to wither. Well, Of course necromancers can use this method, since they are sawing dead people, or dead things anyway. It doesn't matter if there are less bone fragments, since the skeleton soldiers have no need to heal anyway. Negative energy. Undead creatures, negative energy is a kind of strengthening for them. But I perform surgery on living people. A saw is used for amputation surgery. Spinal surgery involves nerves and requires extremely high precision. Moreover, you can't use a saw to remove vertebrae or other bone plates. He went to consult Archmage Bielsa from the medical branch. Facing Gretel, the 18th level Archmage also had a very kind attitude and generously shared his method. Use magic to cut? With precise control, you can cut whatever you want. He also invited Greed to observe an operation. Thin rays of light shot out from Archmage Bielsa's fingertips, bending, interlacing, and closing at will. If you want to cut the skin, cut the skin. If you want to cut the meat, cut the meat. If you want to cut the bones, cut the bones. Those rays were like a hot knife cutting through butter, so smooth and easy. Archmage Bielsa also enthusiastically recommended several magic spells, such as the Force Field Blade, such as the Glow Ray, and the Sand Scimitar. Gretel went back and tried each one. Sorry, insufficient magic control. When the blade of the force field is swung out, it can only control the direction, but not the length. It can be cut in two with a clean cut. The glow rays shoot out, advancing without retreating, going without returning, one by one with piercing wounds. The scimitar of sand can control the length, but this thing is equivalent to a flying grinding wheel, cutting and splashing in all directions. If you want to exercise your magic control, you need to exercise your mental power. To exercise your mental power, the lightning whack-a-mole box given by the teacher, keep walking. Gretel covered his face in pain. He doesn't object to working hard to train his mental strength, but is there really no other way? Isn't there a more convenient shortcut that would allow him to leapfrog the challenge? Gretel went to visit the temple of the god of war again. For the sake of previous cooperation, Bishop Salem could not say enough. Use your mental power directly. Use your mental power to guide my God's divine power to the area that needs treatment. Cut when it needs to be cut, heal when it needs to heal, and there will be no disadvantage. Gretel. Gretel stood in front of a row of clean pork leg bones and touched them one by one with his mental power. Ordinary pork leg bones can be broken cleanly and cut at the exact location. The pig leg bones of the first level magic pig can be broken cleanly, but cutting them is a bit tiring. The pig leg bone of the second level magic pig is a bit unstable when broken, and it cannot be cut instantly. Grade 3 pork leg bone. In short, if you want to use mental power to cross-level operations, this is more troublesome than using magic assistance. So what should we do? Gretel sighed. Theoretically, you can strengthen yourself or weaken the opponent, but muscles can loosen muscles and bones. Is there any way to soften bones so that he can cut? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 866. If you cannot strengthen yourself, you will weaken the other party. This is also a way of thinking. As for how to weaken it, we have to try it slowly. Gretel first found out all the magic in the spell list that claimed to be able to weaken the enemy. Well, Ray of Weakness, Emblem of Weakness, Physical Decline, Touch of Shadow, Shadow of Weakness. The latter ones either have too high spell levels or are too far away from Gretel's learning path, so they will not be considered for the time being. The ray of weakness and the emblem of weakness are in the same sequence. Greet decided to try the ray of weakness first. Weakness ray weakening experiment 1. Subject, Bernard. Experiment procedure. 1 basic data testing. 1 bench press strength test. 2 weight bearing squat test. 3 bone density X-ray testing, right humerus, ulna, radius, femur, fibula, tibia. 4 bone density ultrasound testing, right humerus, ulna, radius, femur, fibula, tibia. 2 release weakness ray on Bernard. 3 comparative data test. 1 bench press strength decreases slightly. 2 slight decrease in weight bearing squat strength. 3 bone density X-ray test, the right humerus, ulna, and radius, and the left leg's femur, fibula, and tibia were compared with the basic data and there was no decrease. 4 bone density ultrasonic testing, the right humerus, ulna, and radius, and the left leg's femur, fibula, and tibia. Compared with the basic data, there is no decrease. So the principle of weak rays does not act on bones. Maybe it works on the muscles? Gretel scratched his head and dispelled the effect of weakness ray, allowing him to relax quietly for half an hour and start all over again. Well, the advantage of magic is this. There is no need to inject antagonistic drugs, and there is no need to wait for the patient to metabolize, you can come back directly. Weakness ray weakening experiment 2. Subject, Bernard. Experiment procedure. 1 basic data testing. 1 refer to the principle of electrocardiogram magic, select reasonable points on the right arm and left leg, install probes, and record the electromyogram in quiet and regular movements, such as bench press, weight-bearing squat. 2 take 1 ml of blood from the brachial vein of the right arm and the great saphenous vein of the left leg, and 0.5 ml of blood from the surface of the right upper arm, right forearm, left thigh, and left calf, and detect the blood potassium content respectively. 2 release weakness ray on Bernard. 3 comparative data test. 1 record the electromyogram again. 2 take blood again and test the blood potassium content separately. 3 wait for the weak ray spell effect to disappear naturally, and then repeat the above experimental process. Experimental results. Before and after the release of weakness ray, there were certain changes in the electromyogram. After the magic was released, the blood potassium content decreased slightly. After the spell effect disappears naturally, the electromyogram waveform and amplitude roughly return to the state before the spell was released, and the blood potassium level rebounds. To sum up, weakness rays weaken human body strength by reducing blood potassium levels, possibly hindering muscle nerve conduction, and disrupting bioelectricity. In terms of weakening the physical strength of bones, weakening rays have little effect, and professionalism is inappropriate. Boss, can we change someone next time? Bernard moved his arms and legs vigorously, bending and lowering his arms, bending and lowering them, doing chest expansion exercises, jumping up and down, and complained softly. It's me every time you come in, it's me every time you come. There are obviously so many security guards in the hospital. Taking 2 weakness rays a day, although it won't hurt your body, it feels weird. Okay, I'll give you 1 more magic pig leg today. Gretel patted him comfortingly. You go pick 2 magic pigs. Well, 1 is level 1 and 1 is level 2. There is no need to go any higher, anyway. Ray of Weakness is a level 2 magic, and it can be used on level 1 and level 2 monsters. The effect is better. He muttered, talking to himself. Bernard turned around to drag the pig. Old Morgan stood aside and said unceremoniously. That's right, such low-level magic is completely useless against high-level warriors. When fighting with full force, the momentum is rushing, and it can naturally resist negative effects. Even if there is a slight gap in the defense, and you are caught off guard and are hit by a ray, the power will circulate in a circle, and you will be instantly healed. It can be driven away. Gretel. Before he asked, he bit his cheek and bit back the words. What is the flow of power among high-level warriors? Why is it naturally resistant to these negative effects? Why can the flow of power eliminate the effects of weak rays? What are its principles and mechanisms of action? No, I really don't have time right now. I can't open another subject. Fortunately, Bernard acted quickly and dragged the magic pig over in a moment. Greet is gearing up, completing a set of bone density X-ray, ultrasound, electromyography, and blood potassium tests. Then, the tranquility technique comes on, turn it over, take a small piece of bone and save it for testing bone density, bone strength, and other data. After taking the bone, throw the weakness ray, and do another set of all tests. Experimental results. Weakness ray only affects muscles and cannot affect bones. Okay. This type of magic is excluded. Next, what other forward, reverse, sideways, and other kinds of magic can be used? Greet held his chin up in thought. I thought about it again, but couldn't figure it out, so I simply took out a magic list and looked at it carefully one by one from beginning to end, from low level to high level. Maybe there is something I haven't noticed. Maybe there are directions that I haven't thought of before, and ideas that I haven't opened up yet. Bernard looked at Greet with concern for a while, then turned his attention to old Morgan. During this period, old Morgan did give him a lot of guidance, and he saw that a breakthrough was just around the corner. Maybe high-level warriors had ways to weaken bones or something. Actually, if you just want to weaken the bones, the Temple of the God of War has corresponding techniques. Old Morgan flipped through Gretel's experimental report for a while, and finally took a step forward and suggested. It must be said that Gretel's report is quite concise and clear, and can be understood by laymen. Many medical papers are like this. As long as they skip the steps, deductions, data, and formulas and go directly to the conclusions, even pure liberal arts students everyone can understand. Old Morgan watched for a long time. Although he couldn't understand the electromyogram, blood potassium, and the like, he finally understood what Greet was planning to do. Sure enough, when this suggestion was made, Gretel was immediately overjoyed, turned to face him, and raised his hand to the magic pig. Boss, please. Old Morgan nodded slightly and took a step forward. When he raised his hand, he didn't see any gestures or any strange light and shadow, and he lightly patted the pig's front leg. Silently, he left at the first touch, then returned to his original position and nodded to Gret. All right. Gretel rolled up his sleeves silently and threw out a detection magic. Under the perspective of meditation, the bone density of the demon pig did not change significantly. Then cut the skin, stretch the muscles, and remove the periosteum. Observe carefully with a magnifying glass, you will see that the exposed bone surface is covered with fine cracks. Gretel. Okay, is this the bone-transforming palm of the God of War temple? This is not what I want. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It rained today. For the first time, I experienced queuing up to do nucleic acid tests in the rain. This morning everyone asked each other, has yesterday's nucleic acid report come out? They were afraid, something that had never happened before, and worried that something had happened in the community. The cherries I received yesterday were not delicious either, not yellow nectar, very hard, like cherries, not happy. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 867. The plan to transform bone into cotton palm failed. After old Morgan explained in detail and popularized various fighting techniques among the soldiers, Gretel finally figured out one thing: in the Temple of the God of War, the so-called method of weakening bones basically uses various force methods to carry out high-frequency damage to the bones. Shock. Shock to a certain extent, violent damage, or violent destruction. All in all, it is very unsuitable for spinal surgery needs. With one slap, Tiny cracks appeared in the bones, and the spinal cord, nerves, etc. were probably destroyed. Greet turned to plan C silently. In other words, go through all the magic and see if there are any alternative ideas. If that doesn't work, you can just do the reverse substitution. Look at those spells that strengthen bones, how to reverse the magic circle and change it to weakening. Greet began to investigate one by one. The power of the barbarian bull, which enhances muscle strength and excludes. Stone boxing, enhances muscle strength, enhances epidermal toughness, and eliminates. Rage technique, this is similar to stimulating the human body to secrete adrenaline, enhance muscle strength, and eliminate. Here's one. Stone bone technique. Can strengthen the bones of undead creatures. Greet was greatly excited and began to study this magic. Well, the relevant description of magic is: a brief flash engulfs your undead ally, and you can see through his carrion and straight into the skeleton. The skeleton now glows with a grayish glow. With the power of the magic, the undead skeleton grows thicker like stone. And solid. Looks useful. Greet regretted that Lin was not in the mage tower, so he couldn't just pull him and the skeleton he summoned over to study. He had no choice but to drag out the dark gold skeleton arcane gold given by His Excellency Immortal, concentrate slightly, and activate the spell model. A flash of magic light flashed, and one agent stood there, motionless. On the heavy dark golden frame, it seems, maybe, there is no change. Alas, the spell level is too low, and it cannot bring blessing effects to dark gold skeletons that are too high level. And to get a low-level undead creature to experiment with this spell, Gretel didn't have it. Fortunately, the door to Black Crow Swamp is always open to Gretel. Gretel went directly to Archmage Edgar and asked for advice on the principles of stone bone technique. The Archmage demonstrated it to him very enthusiastically. He called in a new zombie made by the disciples. The level was neither high nor low. The raw material was the corpse of a level 5 knight. A shot of stone bone technique went down, covering the zombies, and spread his hands towards Gretel. Come, you can feel it. Gretel activated detection magic first and observed carefully. Up and down, left and right, he looked around in a circle and looked at Archmage Edgar hesitantly. It seems, it's bones, the energy is more concentrated. Not only is the energy of the bones more concentrated, but the color of the entire zombie from the inside out also appears much brighter in detection magic. All in all, the level of energy enrichment is a level higher than before receiving the spell. That's right. Archmage Edgar nodded happily. Seeing Gretel hesitate to speak, he smiled and encouraged him. Would you like to cut it and try it? Can it be done? It's the best if you can cut it. What a surgeon believes most is his scalpel and what he sees with his own eyes. With permission, Gretel cut open the zombie's forearm and exposed a section of the ulna. Immediately, he got the answer. Under the magical vision, a layer of gray stuff was covered on the ulna. Sawing a section, you can tell from the feel when sawing that the hardness and strength of the entire bone have improved. However, under direct inspection, it can be seen that the density of the bone plate structure and the density of the cancel-louse bone have not changed from the inside to the outside of the entire bone. What really increases the intensity is the gray magical energy that penetrates the entire body. Is there any magical energy that can reversely reduce bone strength? Gretel asked with a glimmer of hope. Is there anything that can be safely used on living people? Archmage Edgar gave him a helpless gesture. The things here in the necromancy department basically work on undead creatures. They are already dead anyway, so there is no fear of them suddenly coming back to life. As for why the living people are not killed, they don't care. However, you can go to the change department and have a look. The Archmage pointed out a clear path for him. In the transformation department, human enlargement, human reduction, and various transformation spells will have some needs to soften bones. Maybe they have the secret to the problem you are worried about. Gretel thanked him and left. Although he has already searched through the spell library and the thesis library, but, everyone has some secrets. Just like Thunderhorn, the several meditation methods he was given to choose from were all good ones that couldn't be found outside. Greet went straight to the alchemy workshop. Although the alchemy workshop does not specialize in biological transformation, it is still happy to make referrals to him. Soon, Gretel got a spell he was researching. Amorphous body, under development. Target, a corporeal creature willing to be touched. Describe. You sprinkle the animal glue on your companion and quietly trigger the spell. The opponent's bones began to soften instantly, and he and everything on him began to collapse, turning into mud with no fixed shape. The affected creature and its equipment take the form of an amorphous ooze. The new form is boneless and liquid, allowing the creature to fit through holes or openings as small as 2 inches in diameter. Gretel held his breath and read this description almost in awe. Then, he tremblingly asked the transmutation magician who introduced the spell to him. Then, what if the spell fails? You can't change back. The magician who developed this spell had red eyes and bloodshot eyes. Or something went wrong when changing back, and the bones grew to strange positions. Generally speaking, magicians will not use such magic on themselves unless they have to, drilling holes or something like that. Anyway, there are followers and others to do it. Excuse me. It is an otherworldly idea to be able to use magic and medicine to turn biological bones into a soft liquid state, or to have no bones at all. This medicine can be regarded as a new type of bone-eroding potion. It corrodes the bones so much that they lose their shape. The thing is, you are guaranteed to be safe. Gretel thanked him and ran away in confusion. Alas, the path of change is dead, and it is really difficult to make something. It seems that you can't copy others, so you can only find a way to study it yourself. Be self-reliant, work hard, and think of new ways. After discovering 515 today, everyone's rewards have collected enough to reward 10,000 UN. Since it is recommended on 5.26, we will update it together on the day of the push. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It rained all day today, and I feel wet. I want to eat steak. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 868. Gretel regroups and fights again. This time, he started from the principles of bones and speculated step by step. As we all know, the strength of bones is closely related to the calcium content in the bones. More calcium means higher bone strength, less calcium means lower bone strength. Osteoporosis occurs when normal people suffer from diseases, age, or have other special reasons that cause calcium loss. The strength of the bones gradually decreases, and they cannot even support their own weight, resulting in spinal compression fractures and so on. Therefore, if the loss of calcium can be accelerated, the bones can be softened so that they can be bitten off by wrong users. As for what to do after osteoporosis? Of course, it activates the growth magic and makes the bones grow back. Greet thought shamelessly. But of course, to be sure that this idea is valid, we must first prove one point. In this world, the strength of bones is indeed related to the calcium in the bones. Bernard, chop me some more demon pig bones. All demon pigs of the same age, same body part, and different levels, from level 1 to level 5, are all wanted. Boss, hiccup, let's eat tomorrow. Even so, the magic pig bones that Greet requested were delivered in time. Hooves, pig's trotters, ribs, backbones, one by one, they were placed in front of Greet in different categories, leaving Greet speechless for a while. I don't run a butcher shop. When you put it in front of me like this, I felt that I had to put on an apron immediately, picked up the thick bone knife, and shouted at the top of my voice. The hoof is 12 UN and 81 catty, the ribs are 19 and 81 catty. Bernard's question interrupted Gretel's wild imagination. He rolled up his sleeves, geared up, and looked at Gretel eagerly. Boss, how else to cut it? You speak. As long as it is not completely cut into 1 mm slices, I can do it. 10 pounds of lean meat, cut into minced meat, without any fat on top. Greet almost blurted out. After glancing at the barbarian, he decided to forget it. Bernard was too honest to make such a joke. The point is, he doesn't understand this plot either. Alas, loneliness. He waved his hand listlessly. For each pig, cut each type of bone into 3 pieces, 1 square centimeter, 2 square centimeters, or a little more, whatever you want. But it is best to have the same size. In addition, each type of bone is best to be in the same size. Cut the parts, such as the same height of the same piece of pig trotters. Bernard nodded repeatedly. Soon, the sound of banging and banging chops filled the entire room. Gretel was on the other side preparing experimental equipment. Rongeurs, balances, test tubes, concentrated hydrochloric acid, weighing, dissolving, precipitation, separation, drying, weighing, calculation, recording. I'm so tired, Mr. Norwood, please follow the experimental steps I designed and arrange for students to help me do it. For each of these bones, measure the bone thickness, density, hardness, and calcium content. I went to meditate. It's great to be the boss. Being a boss means that you have someone to help you with repetitive, low-quality work anytime, anywhere. You don't have to repeat an experiment 120 times. Gretel meditated on time, exercised her mental strength on time, and had a good sleep. When I got up the next morning, I got the completed data sheet from Master Norwood and gave it directly to Moss for scanning, input, and tabulation. What fell into Greet's hands was a comfortable curve chart. As the level of Warcraft increases, the hardness and bone density gradually increase, and the calcium content also gradually increases. According to experimental data, bone strength is closely related to the calcium content in bones. Therefore, reducing calcium content can effectively reduce bone density and bone strength. So how to reduce it? Greet does have an idea. When he returned home before, he used a slightly modified detoxification technique to detoxify the residents of the valley who were poisoned by cadmium. Mental power locks the cadmium element, activates detoxification technique, and covers the target. The magic power swept through the circle, and all the toxins were eliminated. Perfect. Now, Gretel plans to follow suit. If mental power can lock the cadmium element, it can also lock the calcium element. If it can cover the target of the spell, it can cover a certain bone. Come on, give it a try. Anti-poison technique. Anti-poison technique. Anti-poison technique. He picked a bone of a level 1 demon pig, a shoulder blade, and scratched it hard with a knife, leaving only a shallow mark. Mohs hardness, visual inspection is between 4.5–5. Then, he threw 10 rounds of anti-toxicity and tried again. The effort with the knife has not changed, nor has the depth of the scratches. How could this happen? Even if you draw 10 times in a row, there should be one guaranteed shot. Gretel whispered in annoyance. Fortunately, for his current level, the consumption of detoxification technique was already a drop in the bucket, so he was ruthless and fired 100 rounds in one go. After that, test the hardness and bone density again. Nothing changes. Well, there is no guarantee of even 100 draws, this is too wrong. Gretel stamped his feet. But of course, if he can't get anything out after even 100 strokes, it's probably not because he's too bad. Or, the ability of detoxification technique to extract calcium is too weak. Or, the efforts are in the wrong direction. So how strong is the ability of detoxification technique to extract substances? I remember that when I was trying to get rid of cadmium poisoning in the valley, each villager only used one shot. When I was trying to get rid of mercury poisoning by Master Norwood, he cast 2 spells and only half of it was eliminated. Gretel thought for a moment, found a rabbit, and injected 1 gram of mercury subcutaneously into it. 1 gram of mercury will not cause death. He is very sure of this. Mercury poisoning occurs most quickly through inhalation of vapor, followed by oral ingestion and application of mercury-containing products. As for other ways, there are clinical cases of intravenous injection of dozens of grams of mercury, or swallowing of more than 500 grams of mercury in large quantities, and still alive. Just detoxify in time. Gretel used detoxification technique to brush the rabbit's body to control the escape of mercury and inject it into the test tube. 1 shot. Wisps of mercury vapor escaped, condensed under the control of magic, and fell into the test tube. 2 shots. The mercury in the test tube can be seen rolling around. The 9th shot, the 10th shot, are here. The pointer on the scale returns to the center position. So, 1 shot of detoxification technique can extract almost 0.1 grams of mercury. So, how many milliliters of calcium can be extracted with 100 rounds of detoxification technique? Greet did the math, calculated. At the end of the day, he sighed. In any case, if 100 rounds of antitoxicity were fully effective, this magic pig shoulder blade should be quite crispy. The reason why it still can't be rode and the density still hasn't changed can only be that the detoxification technique didn't work. So what is the reason? It's not necessarily that the detoxification technique didn't detect the poison, so it was running idle and had no effect, right? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Tino9494 for tipping 50,000 starting coins. Rewards and additional updates will be returned one after another after tomorrow's push update. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 869. Greet concentrated his mind and first applied detection toxin on the pig shoulder blade. Very good, the spell is fed back and there is no toxicity. Since there is no toxicity, there is no need to detoxify. So, it is natural that detoxification technique has no effect. Gretel held up his chin. However, detoxification technique can act on cadmium, but cannot act on calcium in bones. Does this mean that detoxification technique judges calcium as a harmless substance or even a beneficial substance? After all, calcium, or a combination of calcium, hydroxyapatite, has a positive effect on the strength of bones. Greet closed her eyes, concentrated, inhaled, and exhaled. However, the existence of some substances is currently harmful or hinders treatment. So, can I identify it as harmful and poisonous within a certain range? After all, be it magic or divine magic, its essence is to use spiritual power to intervene in the material world, and the source of spiritual power is sincere wish. I confirm that the calcium in this bone is poisonous and harmful. It needs to disappear. Greet repeated, and repeated silently, trying his best to hypnotize himself. It wasn't until I felt a little dazed and felt that I could use a scale to detect mental illness in a matter of minutes that I waved my hand vigorously. Detoxification technique, come on. This time, the pork shoulder blade did seem to be a little lighter on the scale. Greet kept up his efforts, firing 10 times in a row, and then used the knife to make a hard stroke. This time, the demon pig's shoulder blade on the blade made a deep mark. Very good, the idea is right. Greet fell back and sat down with a plop, gasping for air. Sarala had been watching curiously. Seeing that his face was tired but happy, she stretched out her hand to shake him. Greet, what are you doing? The one just now seemed to be antidote. How did you do it? I couldn't learn it last time. You may not be able to learn this time, Miss Greet is troubled. Mass, atomic weight, number of protons, number of neutrons, melting point, boiling point, chemical properties. I can't describe this to you. Or am I describing the calcium binder in bones, hydroxyapatite? Molecular formula Ca10, Po4, 6, O2. Great, how to describe the molecular formula, or how to prove it? Gretel. Sarala was still shaking him. Gretel was shaking forward and back, feeling his head being thrown back and forth on his neck, and his brain was about to hit his skull. He was hurt by the impact, so he quickly stopped. Wait. Let me think of a way. Under the threat of brain damage, Greet felt that his brain was extremely flexible and his thinking was greatly accelerated. Well, the way hydroxyapatite exists in bones is as a filler between organic matter. And to take it out from between the bone cells. Will it need to be operated under a microscope? Or at least operate under a microscope? Greet wasn't sure. He was just very clear. He doesn't want to suffer this foreign crime. So. Gretel turned his eyes. Windows, roofs, walls, tables, beakers and flasks, a series of experimental equipment. Sarala had bared her white teeth at him, threatening fiercely. Hurry up. White Fang. White Fang. Hydroxyapatite is most widely found in the human body, firstly in bones and secondly, in teeth. Unlike bones, the hydroxyapatite on teeth is not between cells, but the outermost layer of enamel on the teeth. Bernard. Bring me a pig's tooth? Or another animal's tooth? Wait, that doesn't have to be. Bernard pulled directly on his chest and pulled out the largest animal tooth from the animal tooth necklace. That's not necessary, Bernard, I remember that the animal tooth necklace is the martial arts of our warriors. There is no need to use it as a consumable material, just find me a few pig teeth, preferably fresh. Fresh pig teeth were cut and smashed with magic, and a small piece of enamel was removed. Greet was full of confidence, used tweezers to put it into the petri dish, and held it in front of Miss Silver Dragon. Sarala, this is it. You use your mental power to lock this thing, set it as the extraction target of antitoxicity, and then release the spell. If you still find it difficult, just smash it and lock it again. Sarala held the small piece of enamel with her slender white fingers and crushed it with her fingertips without moving it. Then, the silver light flashed on the fingertips, and small dragon scale patterns appeared indistinctly. Then he crushed it, and the white powder fell. The dragons are really ferocious. These are teeth. Switching to dental clinic, if you want to grind tooth enamel into powder, you need to use a high-speed turbine drill with 320,000 RPM. You just crush it with your fingers. Greet squatted on the edge, looked up silently, and sighed quietly. After Sarala crushed the piece of tooth enamel, she looked around and locked onto a piece of bone. Detoxification technique. The light flashed, and the hard pig leg bone collapsed silently. Gretel was silent for a moment, then slowly turned his head. Sarala, why can you use the spell immediately after you get it? And so strong. When you say pull away, pull away. Looking at the appearance of the pig leg bone, the calcium in the bone must have been removed. Because Gretel said it's okay, the silver dragon girl turned her head and looked at him with a smile like a flower. Greet said it's okay, so it's definitely okay. So, do you believe me? If I identify it as poisonous, I believe it is poisonous. I pointed out that I could pull away, so I pulled away without hesitation. When I tell you that this can be done, you have no doubt at all and firmly believe that this method can be successful. Moreover, because I don't know what kind of substance this is, and I don't know that it is actually a natural substance in the bones, my mind is purer and my will is more determined. Combined with the powerful mental and magical power of the adult silver dragon, all the calcium in the bones was drained out with just one cast. Sarala, your trust makes me, let me. Fiery torrents surged in Greet's heart. He took a deep breath, exhaled deeply, then pursed his lips and nodded vigorously. Well, it is indeed possible. Sarara, didn't you do it? I won't let you down. I will not take advantage of your trust to let you do bad things or harm others. Great job, Sarara. Come on, let's try again. Control the power of the spell and only remove half, or 1/3. Control the range of the spell and remove only such a small piece on the bone. He raised another piece of pig spine, floated it in front of the silver dragon girl, and swept it with mage's technique, dyeing a small piece on the vertebrae of the spine. As long as we can do this, we will no longer be afraid of being unable to cut bones when performing surgeries on high-level knights. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Tomorrow I will recommend a column called Popular Products / Today's Trend Vein. I have agreed with the editor and will be updated to 10,000 words. Please remember to read it. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 870. With Sarara's powerful output, Gretel is even more powerful in surgery. Being able to stably extract part of the calcium and concentrating the extraction range into a small area creates working conditions for orthopedic surgery. Tranquility. Cut the skin. Stop the bleeding. Sarala, the powerful magician's hand, pulls the skin. Stretch the muscles. According to the position of the line I drew, remove 30% of the calcium. Okay. I'm starting. Animal testing, animal testing. Animal experiments ended and progressed to human experiments. There were indeed many cases collected by the Temple of the God of War, but they were not too many. Gretel had one operation every 2 days and one operation every 3 days, and he quickly performed the surgery on old Morgan. Are you sure you want to do it? Of course I'm sure. Old Morgan threw off his shirt, lay down on the operating table without hesitation, and automatically turned to his stomach. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Don't hesitate, do it. Even if you fail, it's my fate, I don't blame you. Greet clenched his fists hard and encouraged himself. Just when he was about to release the tranquility technique to induce general anesthesia, the old man suddenly turned his head again, his eyes shining brightly, staring straight at him. Even if the operation is successful, you still have to become a knight. Gretel, T. I know, you don't need to remind me, I dare to discount the teacher's orders, he is afraid he won't knock my head off. Do surgery, do surgery. Exercise your mental strength, exercise your mental strength. Work out your stamina, build your stamina. Do animal experiments, do clinical experiments. I made it. I finally made it. Greet dropped the endless ink pen, raised his arms and shouted. Animal experiments, simulation experiments with skeletons, stress measurements, and a lot of calculations. Until now, we finally have the result. Between pectus excavatum and scoliosis, pectus excavatum should be repaired first and then scoliosis. Otherwise, the chest will be deformed, the ribs will be deformed, and the internal organs will be compressed, which will cause greater problems. Celera. The subsequent surgeries can begin. Let those patients prepare. Especially the children, they need to be re-examined, have a new CT scan, and let the contracted spirit take another look. The healers in the entire outpatient area stopped. Sarala hurried over, looking excited. Can it really be done? Can it be done tomorrow? Can all those children be cured? Can little Leah be the first? During this time, she has been following little Jenny and can already write hundreds of words. Greet nodded vigorously, with high spirits. In addition to the relationship between pectus excavatum and scoliosis, other complications of scoliosis include spina bifida, syringomyelia, and various abnormalities. He has also paralyzed 70 or 80 dogs these days, which counts. Made the experience. It's nothing more than soldiers coming to block it and water coming to cover it up. All abnormal and proliferated tissues, soft and hard, should be cut off. Separate the stuck things carefully and loosen them all. All lipomas and the like are cut out, and any excess cyst wall that is combined with bulges is cut off, and the nerve tissue in the cyst is returned to the spinal canal. Hey, it would be nice to have treatment. Gretel thought to himself that if there was no treatment, at least half of these patients would have died of hemorrhage if he had stumbled through it. Of the remaining half, 80% have various sequelae such as paralysis and incontinence. But now, the patients he has treated are all jumping up and down, and 2 of them have made breakthroughs and advanced to the next level. Sarala, let's work hard. With bright eyes, he looked at the patients busy working in the corridor, especially little Leah, who was walking quickly with a wash basin in her hand. Leah, you will be able to receive treatment in a few days. Are you afraid? Don't be afraid, respected Mr. Mage. Little Leah put down the copper basin and walked over in small steps. She raised her head, met Gretel's eyes, and then bowed deeply. I believe Mr. Master will definitely cure me. If it really can't be cured, it doesn't matter. Mr. Master has done a lot for me during this time. Gretel took a breath. For a moment, he really wanted to say, I will give you the last treatment. The last treatment is more skillful, and the probability of problems is smaller. However, he knew it wouldn't do much good. The conditions of patients are ever changing. Every time you treat a person, you must be extremely careful. There may be some difference in proficiency between the first patient and the 10th patient, however, there will not be much improvement between the 10th and 20th patient. Unless you have done hundreds of cases in one go, you will be able to do it with ease and become very familiar with it. But in fact, this 1, 10, 20, are all for the purpose of treating the only one, the son of the Lord of Ostend, and accumulating proficiency. Don't worry. He slowly stretched out his hand, landed on little Leah's disheveled hair, and rubbed it hard. Feeling that his bird's nest-like hairstyle was messed up even more, Gretel knelt down and looked into little Leah's eyes. I will cure you no matter what. If I can't, I'll go to the Archbishop or the Archmage. The damage caused by the surgery can only be repaired by limb regeneration at most, and it can definitely be undone. Go faster. 1 operation a day would take more than half a month to cure everyone. 1 operation every 2 days would take just 1.5 months. Nearly 2 months have passed. Count Ostend is still waiting. Waiting for news from the only son, waiting for the sincerity of the Parliament. Well, during this period, I didn't care about the situation across the sea. How is the situation in the Netherlands? The situation in the Netherlands is like a pot of slowly heating water, bubbling and boiling. The lid is pushed upwards, and a burst of heat comes out, which calms down a little, the lid falls, and then the heat accumulates. After secret discussions with the Parliament, the nobles of the Netherlands purchased healing potions, magic equipment, and magic scrolls from the Kingdom of Kent while mediating with the Holy See and the royal family. The Duke of the Netherlands sent his younger brother to lead representatives of the large and small nobles in the territory to organize a petition group of more than 200 nobles. He traveled thousands of miles to the royal capital to petition the royal family and the Archbishop of the kingdom. King Brolin closed his doors. Are you kidding me? He and the Queen have just been married, and they don't have time to have fun every day. How can they have time to deal with this? Besides, pleasing the queen also costs money. From the wedding to now, the queen has already added 2 sets of jewelry. One set is gold inlaid with coral, and the other is gold and silver set with emeralds and diamonds. Although the queen is virtuous and simple, the only enchantments on the jewelry are flash, dust removal, and cold and heat resistance, which is still money. And when attending small banquets and dances, those hairpins, armbands, dance clothes, and feather fans. Jingle, jingle, jingle. The Dutch nobles stayed in the royal capital and kept sending all kinds of gifts to the palace. A shawl that is so thin that it can be worn through a ring, 5 layers of silk that can still see the skin, a horse whose fur is as shiny as satin. Unconsciously, the total value of the gifts exceeded 50,000 gold coins. From the queen mother, the king, and the queen, to the royal butler and the queen's favorite maid, no one expressed any sign of relief. As for the archbishop, please, making money for the Holy See is also one of his tasks. Without money, how could the Holy See organize an army to attack the Kingdom of Kent? How to maintain the majesty of the Holy See? Once the army moves, personnel, ordnance, horses, food, magical items, everything costs money. The Dutch nobles were desperate and desperate. From May, to June, to July, they sat in Sleepy City, sighing. 10 more handicraft workshops have opened in my territory. Don't mention it. In my port, there were more than 100 merchant ships entering the port last June, but this year there are less than 60. If you can't enter the port, you can't get the goods, and you can't do business at all. Your merchant ship can still travel across the country to the Kingdom of Rhine, but what about my place? All the sugar workshops are closed. This time I came to give gifts, and I also brought the last bit of refined white sugar with me. I collected the things neatly. Not accurate. How shameless. Shameless. I think we are too shameless. A faint sigh floated out from the corner. With a flick of the brush, everyone's eyes were focused on. The speaker was Bruce Baron Perry Hayes, a famous merchant baron in the Netherlands. His territory is located in the hinterland of the Netherlands. In addition to saline alkali land, it is also a saline alkali land. There are 3 storm surges a year, plus 1 seawater intrusion. There are no mines, no special products, and no specialty workshops. If it had been any other noble, he might have been fine. However, this Baron Bruce was really embarrassed. Every noble family in the surrounding area knocked on the door for a loan of 5,000 yuan. Collect a sum of money, rent a boat, follow the boat in person, use your noble status as a tax exemption certificate, and save a small amount of taxes. After saving money, he worked hard to build roads and houses in the territory, exempted entry duties, and attracted businessmen from all over. When these merchants visited the place, they found that there were roads, ports, warehouses, and restaurants. The most amazing thing is that there are custom streets one after another, and casinos one after another. You can explore the secrets, or you can invite them to your door. Relying on various indescribable means, he managed to turn a sleepy small town into a famous city in the Netherlands with flowers and flowers. What do you think? William Orange, the younger brother of the Duke of the Netherlands, asked in a deep voice. Baron Bruce sighed. Forcing us to do this, to come all the way to beg the King and the Holy See for favor, is already embarrassing. Since they want to see us suffer humiliation, we will simply show our shame to them, and then drag them down. Let's see who is more shameless. 3 days later, Queen Brolin, who was waving a small silk fan on the terrace of the palace and chatting and laughing sweetly with her female companion, as well as the nobles and servants who were qualified to enter and exit the palace, stared at a group of people walking slowly towards the entrance of the palace. My eyes almost fell out. Most of this group of people are tall, with straight spines and steady and powerful steps. You can tell at a glance that each person is a knight. Even without looking at their clothes, no one would misunderstand them based on their demeanor. These people are definitely nobles. The premise is not to look at the clothes. There were more than 200 people, headed by William Orange, all wearing beggars' clothes that were covered with holes and patches, with rippling edges and loose edges. Each person held a stick in his hand, and hanging on the stick was a tattered sack used by beggars to carry things. They lined up to the entrance of the palace, saluted collectively, and shouted, "Your Majesty, the great king, please have mercy on the Dutch. Your loyal Dutch subjects are almost dying of poverty and are being forced to beg for food." Ah! The queen covered her red lips with a small translucent silk fan and exclaimed softly, "What are they doing? What are these Dutch people doing?" When she was in the kingdom of Rhine, even if she searched hard every day, the White Wolf family in the north, which had a set of armor passed down from generation to generation, was not so poor. When people from their family go out to socialize, no matter what, they still dress in line with aristocratic etiquette. In the grandest and most magnificent hall of the palace, which could accommodate the largest number of nobles, King Brolin's face turned livid and he cursed. "You dress up like a beggar and pretend to be pitiful and ask me for money? Don't think I don't know your family background. You are a bunch of rich beggars." Half an hour later, the palace door slowly opened. A pair of ceremonial officers holding scepters inlaid with gold and silver went out side by side and guided the Dutch nobles in. 3,400 words. There will be new chapters at 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. Today there are more than 10,000 words. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 871. Even if he is scolded by the king, even if he will be known as a beggar from now on, even if it will bring trouble to the entire Netherlands, and even if he is ridiculed as a beggar by nobles across the continent for hundreds of years. After the archbishop came forward to mediate solemnly and kindly, the king finally issued a new edict out of faith in the Lord of Glory, out of respect for the Holy See, and out of compassion for the people of the Netherlands. Allow Dutch ships to dock at the kingdom's ports. However, you must apply for a license in advance. One license is for one ship, no mixing is allowed. Merchants entering Hong Kong are not allowed to trade at will, and can only trade with designated merchants at designated exchanges and within designated time periods. Slightly reduce the export tariff on wool, but only businessmen who purchase treasury bonds, newly issued treasury bonds this year, reaching a certain amount can enjoy the preferential tax rate. Lin Lin Zong Zong, in a word, can be regarded as raising his hand, but it is still very uncomfortable. It can only be said to be better than nothing. As long as industry and commerce are allowed to spin up, even if it is slow and full of obstacles, there will be hope. Industry and commerce complement each other. Only by moving and rotating, from materials to money, and then from money to materials, and constantly multiplying, can these two industries survive. Without living water, there is death. Accordingly, the Archbishop, on behalf of the Kingdom Church, agreed to temporarily suspend the search operations of the Inquisition's Black Knights. Correspondingly, the Dutch were asked to conduct their own enumeration, destroy collections and objects, expel pagan hired workers, and cut off ties with pagan merchants. After the buffer period is over, the tribunal will conduct another census. If there are no major problems, you can let it go. It seems that it is indeed a lot gentler and has made a lot of concessions. Therefore, the Dutch nobles could only hold it in their stomachs and respectfully thank the Lord of Glory for his grace, the Holy See for its mercy, and the King for his grace. After thanking him, the king issued an edict again. In view of the fact that the Netherlands is too far away from the royal capital, the king cannot listen to the demands of the people of the Netherlands in time, So he sends a governor to rule the Netherlands on behalf of the king. What? Who do you want to send? This is a big matter, and the great, wise, and benevolent king needs to study it carefully before deciding on the candidate. After all, in order for the glory of the kingdom to shine in the Netherlands, this candidate must be chosen carefully. The Dutch nobles returned to their territories with anxiety. The orders were issued one after another, arousing small cheers and big sighs behind their backs. How will the king decide on the governor? Obviously, according to the current king's character, he will probably choose the one with the best relationship with him, the one who gives the most gifts, and the one who is most comfortable patting his horses. Wait, then. The governor elected in this way will definitely work hard to recoup the cost after he takes office. Before that, the entire Netherlands was forcibly given a lifeline, and the production machines started roaring to life. Well. Old Curry squatted at the door of his workshop, knocked his pipe on the bluestone steps, and sighed sadly. He is a carpet factory owner in Flanders, an important wool spinning town in the Netherlands. He is 52 years old this year. There are 4 workers employed in the workshop, 2 rug makers and 2 weavers. Including himself, his 3 sons, his daughter-in-law and his grandson, the entire factory can produce more than 100 blankets throughout the year. And among these carpets and tapestries, the theme of the best and most precious one must be to praise the glory of the Lord of Glory. Old Curry took his 3 sons to draw and weave by hand, and no other daughters-in-law, grandsons, or employees were allowed to interfere. After weaving, we respectfully dedicated it to the largest church in Flanders. Not a penny. This habit lasted for more than 30 years. From his father's hand, it was passed down to himself, year after year. However, this year, Laucoli's blanket workshop suffered an unprecedented blow. Hey, Old Curry, when will the delivery be delivered? Jingle bells, 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 and a mule cart slowly came to the door of the workshop. A young man in his 20s jumped out of the mule cart. His woolen coat was clean and tidy, but the cuffs were a bit worn and white. The style was not this year's new style. He carefully walked around a puddle of water, bowed slightly in front of Old Curry, and smiled before saying anything. Can it be delivered tomorrow? How many can it be delivered? The ship will leave the port the day after tomorrow, and it must be delivered to the ship tomorrow evening at the latest. Well. Old Curry sighed again. He braced himself on his knees, stood up with difficulty, and guided the young man inside. Going in from the workshop gate, more than a dozen carpet looms are placed against the wall. The blanket above is brightly colored and has exquisite and delicate patterns. Basically, the general pattern has been revealed, and the progress is either 1/3, half, or close to completion. Just looking at these machines, the blanket workshop in front of me is clearly doing good business. But look at the human hands, only half of the looms have people busy in front of them. Old Curry was trembling, holding on to his stiff and sore waist from sitting for a long time spinning, and led the young man through the production workshop to the warehouse. The warehouse was empty except for a dozen rolls of blankets hanging on shelves, covered under dense coarse cloth. That's all. The young man glanced briefly, and his face turned dark instantly. A dozen rolls, even if they are of the best quality, the selling price of a dozen rolls of blankets is not even 1/3 of the amount they purchase from this store every year. Old Curry, don't hide good things. The young man stepped forward, lifted a piece of coarse cloth, glanced at it quickly, then lifted a piece of coarse cloth, and glanced again. The more I swipe, the tighter my brows become, and the more I swipe, the uglier my face becomes. Our family has been doing business with you for many years. If you have good things, you must remember to leave some for us. With only this small amount of goods, we can't even pay for a trip to the ship. We made a deposit years ago. We also want to make more things. Old Curry continued to sigh. He supported his waist and led the young man to the warehouse next door. The heavy, moisture-proof warehouse was empty, except for a few small bags of dyed wool on the long rows of wooden shelves. If the wool cannot come in, there will be no spun yarn. If there is no wool, the dyed yarn used for weaving carpets will not be available. Our workshop has been out of raw materials for a month. Young people also know this difficulty, as do shipping businessmen. In fact, anyone who catches a child over 3 years old on the streets of Flanders knows about it. Ever since the king's new policy came down, everyone has had a hard time. During this period, the workshops cannot operate, and workers still have to be paid, and they have to eat and drink. Day by day, they can only get in but not get out. The price of flour has increased 5 times, and the price of salted fish has also increased 3 times. And these workers are all veteran workers who have been with the workshop for 10, 20 years, or even 2 generations of father and son. If you have no choice but to resign hastily, you will have a reputation as a mean person in the industry and your reputation will be ruined. The young man silently added for him. Old Curry tied the mouth of the last bag of wool tightly, turned around, and looked at him eagerly. Are there any new goods recently? You can get half a ton of dyed wool. Next month, we will deliver 15 blankets. No, 20. I will lead everyone to work day and night, and I will never miss you. Thing. I don't know, to be honest, my boss also mortgaged a house to take this boat trip. This time, how much goods can be sold, how much can be brought in, and how much money can be spent to take out the goods. Before returning, no one knows, have no idea. The young man sighed deeply, settled the accounts with old Curry, and moved away all the finished blankets. The mule cart was loaded with goods and jingled as it headed towards the port terminal. Alas, it doesn't matter if you don't have any fish or shrimps. If you sell something, you can hope to get your money back. Old Curry carefully locked the gold coins into the money box, picked 2 more and put them in the money bag, called a taxi, and wandered to the area where carding, dyeing, finishing, and spinning craftsmen lived. Bless the Lord of Glory, they must have new raw materials. With ships coming in and out of the port and new yarn for dyeing, old Curry's blanket workshop started to work again. The rug maker uses a special thorn gun to pierce the wool behind the woven warp and weft threads, and then pulls it out. As it enters and exits, patterns gradually appear on the loom. The knitter flies with his fingers, winding the wool around 2 adjacent warps one by one, knotting it at the back, and cutting the thread ends with a knife, then passes the weft thread through the middle of the front and back warps, and smashes it firmly with a comb. 1 square foot of carpet requires thousands of knots. An experienced older weaver, paired with a novice, can weave 1 square meter of carpet a month by hand. Using the spear method, it can only weave 2 or 3 square meters in a month at most. In the workshop, the flowers, animals, people, and scenery are all filled with the blood and sweat of the weavers. Knit, knit. A blanket, sold to the palace, can allow the light steps of ladies to spin and dance on it day and night. A blanket, sold to the glorious holy city, can save the pain on the knees of priests when they kneel in prayer. A carefully woven blanket mixed with silk thread of a special material was sold to the Kingdom of Kent. It is said that it can be processed into a flying carpet by the magicians. None of this has anything to do with old Curry. All he knew was that a blanket, sold to a merchant in the maritime trade, could cover half of his family's expenses for half a month after deducting various costs and wages. The path for a family to climb up is slowly accumulated from these blankets. Loom, loom, another loom. House, house, from renting a house, to buying a house, to buying a piece of land to build a workshop. The eldest son is a textile worker, the second son is a textile worker, and the second and third generations of the family are all textile workers. When it comes to the eldest son's smartest grandson, he can even be sent to church to study. If you are lucky, if you are favored by the priest, it is even possible to become a glorious priest. By that time, their family will be able to follow suit and become masters. By the way, I heard that the new governor is about to take office, and I don't know how much taxes will be increased by then. Before he takes office, he must knit as many blankets as possible, sell them as much as possible, and save more money. Everyone, work harder. Tonight, each person will get an extra spoonful of mutton. Old curry. Old curry. Suddenly someone shouted outside. Chaotic footsteps came quickly, and in a moment, a familiar young man rushed into the workshop and grabbed Old Curry's arm. "Hide the blanket now." Old Curry's arm trembled, and with his fingers flying behind the warp, he immediately tied a wrong knot. He looked at the visitor a little angrily, but the young man who came to buy goods on time did not have time to apologize and said in a hurry, "The Black Rider is here. Hide all your blankets, especially those special blankets. If you can't hide them, burn them. Hide all the wool. If you are still weaving, please unload it from the loom. Before we leave, we have to inform the next family that we will leave the harbor tomorrow to avoid the limelight." After that, he turned around and left. Old Curry shuddered, and quickly raised his voice, shouting at his son, daughter-in-law, and factory employees. "What are you doing standing still? Work quickly. Bata, Will, come with me." The family was in a hurry, unloading and hiding blankets and wool. Not even 2 days after hiding, Black Cavalry's iron boots broke through the workshop door. "Someone reported that your workshop is producing things for pagans." The leader was a knight in black clothes and armor. His face was hidden between his helmet and visor, and his appearance could not be clearly seen. He pressed the sword with one hand, looked around, and waved casually. "Search. Search carefully, bit by bit. Don't miss any of the warehouse walls, secret rooms, cellars, and roofs." The knights of the Inquisition, the guards, thugs, and all kinds of people they brought with them, dispersed with a bang and dug 3 feet into the ground. Old Curry trembled and stepped forward to ask for money, but was mercilessly pushed to the loom frame by a guard. "Go away. We are here to safeguard the glory of the Lord. Don't taint us with dirty money." After a search, the blankets hidden on the beams and the woolen bags hidden under the mattress were found one after another. Immediately the chains jingled, and Old Curry, his wife, 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, the whole family, and 4 hired workers were all locked out. "Let me go. Let me go. I have always believed in the Lord of Radiance devoutly. In the cathedral, there are blankets from our workshop every year. My grandson is studying with Father Root in the cathedral. Torture, interrogation, blackmail." When the family finally managed to save their lives and were released with their half-crippled bodies, the house, workshop, and loom, everything, were all in the name of someone else. "I was wronged, I was wronged." Old Curry was lame in one leg, and his face had a large burn mark from the soldering iron, which was terrifying. He gritted his teeth, leaned on a cane, and moved towards the cathedral step by step. "I want to see my grandson, I want to see Father Rudd, I want to see the bishop, I want to appeal." "You'd better not go on the way," a 30-year-old neighbor stopped him with pity on his face. "Your grandson." He quietly brought Old Curry to his home. Stepping into a side room, a slightly bulging thing was wrapped in half-worn sheets, making no sound. Opening it up, the marks on the small body were horrific. Old Curry exploded all of a sudden. "My weaving workshop, my grandson, the glorious Lord of Dogs, my whole family has believed in you for so many years." He took to the streets. His son, the hired hand, followed into the streets. From every house, every workshop in Flanders, every farm in the suburbs, every farmhouse and barn, angry craftsmen, small businessmen and small workshop owners took to the streets in a mighty force, forming a torrent. "Tear down those churches. Burn those monasteries. Destroy those icons. Glorious Holy See, get out of the Netherlands. 4,000 words. Thanks to @FlowerHusky for the 100 starting coin reward. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There will be another update tonight. Today's 10,000 word update. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 872. There's a commotion in Flanders City. Yes, it finally started. At the corner of the back wall of a dyeing and finishing workshop, the dyeing workshop master Avar Brisson was half hidden in the shadows, whispering to Frank, the delivery boy who often ran to their workshop. Two pairs of bright eyes stared at the vast flow of angry people without blinking. The trouble has finally started, and you can get away. Thank you for staying here for 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. Avar sighed softly. Of course his real name was not Aval Brisson, nor was he a dyer. In fact, he is a magician, transmutation, and alchemy branch. Born as a commoner, he was admitted to the Magic Academy from a general school. After graduating from the Magic Academy, he was unable to enter any mage tower in Nevis due to his qualifications. I'm in my 30s, stuck at level 3, and can't advance even if I die. A magician of this age and level can live a comfortable life if he wants to hang out in a low-level magic tower in another place, or accept an appointment from a small nobleman, become a family member, or something like that. I want to apply for a job as a technical director in some workshops. Although my status is slightly lower, I can earn more money. If I want to travel all over the country and sleep in the open air to take risks, I have a higher probability of advancing, but my arms and legs are old and I really can't move. In order to make progress and resources, he accepted the task of the Parliament and came to Flanders City incognito. As a professional who had opened a workshop but was forced to go bankrupt and had to flee, he quietly took root. In a flash, 5 years passed. Remember to pack your things. Destroy all items that may expose your identity. The delivery boy who came to connect was also a member of the Parliament. At this time, he lowered his voice and spoke softly and quickly. At 10 o'clock tonight, there will be someone at the door of Perfume Rose at number 15 Rose Street. The code is a rose, half of it is inlaid with gold, and half of it is inlaid with silver. Remember it. After saying that, he got on the back of a mule, waved his whip in the air, turned around and left. He is very busy today. In such a big city of Flanders, there are not just 1 or 2 people to be notified and places to be observed. He is a magician of the magic control system. He is the branch of the magic control system that specializes in group psychology. An opportunity like today is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Avar stood in the corner for a while, watching the young man disappear into the crowd, then sighed softly and returned to the workshop. Before he entered his room, the door to the opposite room was pushed open with a creak, and the high-pitched voice of the landlady came straight in. Avar, are you back? What's for dinner tonight? Veal stew, or fish? I bought a big sea bass. Let's take the sea bass. The boss lady is always good at cooking fish. Avar smiled reluctantly at him and walked to his room. There were footsteps behind me, and the landlady quickly caught up and lowered her voice. What's wrong with you? Are you unhappy? You don't want to make trouble, do you? I'm telling you, don't go with those people to make trouble. We, a small family, can't afford to make trouble. This is what the gentlemen of the Holy See don't do. Be ruthless, and when the Black Night pushes over, these people will all die. Avar took a deep breath, nodded solemnly, and quickly entered the room. I walked too fast, and the corner of my clothes got caught on the wooden thorns of the doorframe, causing a big hole. The landlady immediately said ouch from behind. Why are you so careless? Daisy. Daisy. Stop playing around there and mend Mr. Brisson's clothes. A little girl of 6 or 7 years old rushed out in response. A pincushion in one hand, and a small basket with various rags in the other. Rushing in front of Avar, he almost lost his footing and bumped into him. Sir, let me mend your clothes. Go back. I'm busy with something. I'll call you when I'm done. Avar waved without looking back. After packing her things for a while, she suddenly turned around and saw the little girl still standing there timidly. Avar sighed, took off his coat, and threw it into her hand. Take it away, mend it slowly, I'm not in a hurry to wear it. He quickly packed his things, filled the small suitcase, and locked it tightly. While I was still packing my backpack, there was a sudden burst of exclamation outside, coming from far and near, like a mountain roaring and a tsunami. Black Knight? Black Knight! Run away quickly, the Black Knight is coming out. Dad! Dad! The sound of exclamations, running sounds, and the thundering sound of horse hooves coming from behind were all heard together. Aval's heart skipped a beat, and he closed the door and opened the back window without thinking. Instead of jumping out of the window and escaping, he turned back, threw out an activated rope, and pulled himself up to the rafter. Hold your breath and listen carefully. Here. There are people here too. Boom. The sound of the workshop door being kicked open. Clang, clang, the sound of iron boots on the ground. Screams, inquiries, begging. Screams. Avar held his breath, remained motionless, and quietly performed an invisibility spell on himself. Soon the door was kicked open. The person looked around, opened cabinets, lifted the bottom of the bed, and then stared at the shaking rear window. Gone from there. Chase. Avar huddled on the rafters. It took a long time, until the entire dyeing workshop was completely silent, and until the sound of horse hooves and swords drawn had all gone away, he climbed down the beam and walked out carefully. What you see is one corpse after another. Lying down, half of the body immersed in the dye vat, one leg straddling the door, Tom the dyer, Roy the cloth turner, Parker the fuller, and George, who is only 8 years old and has just entered the dye house as an apprentice. The landlady who had been loudly asking him what he wanted for dinner had half-dried blood. She was lying at the door of the room with her arms spread wide, as if she was trying to protect something. Avar carefully turned over her body and saw Daisy's little body curled up into a ball. The little girl closed her arms and hugged his torn clothes tightly. The corners of the clothes were stained red with blood. Avar stood silently in the dyeing workshop, saying nothing for a long time. When it got dark, he bent down and closed the boss's wife's eyes, then picked up little Daisy and let the little girl lie on her side in her arms. Finally, he unfolded the mended bloody clothes and gently covered them both. I will avenge you, he whispered. Then, he went back to his room, opened his suitcase, picked out a few things, stuffed them into his backpack, picked them up and walked out quickly. It's impossible not to gather together, under the dim candlelight. Aval dyeing master and former third-level magician Brisson was full of emotions when facing the carders, dyers, weavers, and workshop owners who were surviving the disaster. With an angry face, he raised his arms and shouted. In our dyeing shop, there was no one who made trouble from top to bottom, but they still killed everyone. From the proprietress to the boy, even the little girl as young as 6 or 7 years old was spared. We can only defeat them if we gather together. There are many of us. Yes, they are strong, they are knights, and they can kill 100 people alone. But there are many of us. All of us gather together, the governor and the Inquisition, no matter how many people there are, they can't kill us all. Textile workers, fishermen, farmers, everyone, gather together. Down with the Holy See. Demolish the church. Down with the Holy See. Destroy the church, an old, angry voice sounded from the crowd below. In that church, there are more than 30 tapestries dedicated to me. I am going to destroy them. Destroy them. Demolish the church. The fire of anger burned in the crowd. From Flanders to the Netherlands, then from the Netherlands to Delft, Dordrecht. People walked out of their villages, out of their workshops and onto the streets. Wave after wave, one after another, they rushed towards all the churches and monasteries that they usually believed in and worshipped. The holy knights are blocked and can't get through. The black knights of the Inquisition haven't been seen yet. Sir, there are too many enemies in front of us. Our brothers are already tired, and 2 of our sabers have been cut off. The magic is not enough. The power of faith is no longer available. Those mobs, not only do they not pray, they are cursing the Lord of Glory and raising weapons against our Lord. Father Rand, you are a good man. Go away, we won't kill you. Boom. For a whole month, uprisings led by citizens and rural poor swept through the provinces of the Netherlands. Fully 1 million people participated in the uprising, and more than 5,000 churches were destroyed, including suspected bombing. They destroyed a large number of icons, holy bones and other sacred objects, as well as paintings, statues, etc. in the church. The Holy See's power in the Netherlands and the power of faith accumulated in the church suffered heavy losses. Louis Foy, the new governor of the Netherlands and the Queen Mother's lover, fled back to the capital in panic. Without the support of divine magic, the paladins and the Black Knights of the Inquisition fought alone and achieved certain results, but were still pushed back by the wave of anger. For a time, the entire Netherlands was filled with the sound of killings and the smoke of war everywhere. The letter of request for help from the Dutch nobles was once again delivered to the desk of the review committee. You want help? You want people or things? You want a powerful archmage? Commissioner Elias Usman of the Evocation Department glanced at the request for help without comment and passed it to the Prophecy Department next to it. The member of the Confusion Control Department stretched out his head, scanned down 10 lines, and asked smoothly. Have they sent out troops themselves? No troops were officially sent out. Of course, some people were sent to participate secretly and used the explosives we gave them, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to destroy so many churches. Then we are required to send someone out now, the member of the Change Department snorted in a bad mood. During this wave of uprisings, the Parliament's spies lost a lot of money. One of the Transformation Mage, in order to protect the poor people from escaping, rushed into the Black Knights of the Tribunal, sacrificing his life and self-destructing. Although he was just an inconspicuous third-level mage, he was still in a bad mood after receiving the report. They send troops, we send people. They don't send the main force, but they expect us to send people and a large amount of supplies. Do they want us to fight for them? The truth is right as usual, the protection magician presided over the meeting. He first affirmed the view of the system of change, and then made a supplementary opinion. But since the fight is already like this, we still have to express our feelings. In this way, we can send out a batch of supplies appropriately to show that we still support them, and send a few low-level mages as observers. You can have this. Indeed. By the way, I am very curious about the use of divine magic after the church was destroyed, especially after the people resisted the Holy See on a large scale. The committee members nodded. The member of the Protection Department looked around. Does anyone have any additional comments? I have the review committee member of the Curse Department and Medical Branch calmly raised his hand. Don't we still have a project to cooperate on? Master Gret Nordmark is treating the son of Count Ostend. Ask him about the progress. If there are results, it can be considered a sign of sincerity. Whether it's the Earl's son or the other children they sent. 3,300 words. 10,800 words updated today. Suddenly I discovered that there are already 1,812 votes today. Can you quickly collect 2,000 starting monthly tickets? If you get it together, you'll get 2 extra monthly passes. Starting from tomorrow, there will be more rewards for 6 consecutive days. Wave your claws. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Rawson for the 500 starting coins. There is particularly good news today. Released in Shanghai officially announced that starting from June 6, high school sophomores and seniors will return to school. It seems that the end of the lockdown is really around the corner. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Lan 2020. Chapter 873. Gretel had never cared about the situation in the Netherlands since he spoke nonsense at the enlarged review meeting and was pulled out of the club by his teacher to die. Isn't the treatment delicious? Aren't you busy with research? The Parliament does not have international news broadcast every day. On the opposite continent, it is either here or there, in dire straits. In fact, let alone international news, there is not even domestic news. So, when Gretel was pulled out of the hospital by the Magic Council and asked him to give some sincerity, the Netherlands had already updated the 3rd episode. In the 1st episode, a Dutch nobleman petitioned in beggars, and the king generously agreed. In the 2nd episode, the new governor arrived, and resistance surged. Many churches were demolished and icons were smashed. In the 3rd episode, the Holy See and the king mobilized the army to brutally suppress. It is said that Cardinal Gravella, the previously appointed Grand Magistrate of the Netherlands, shouted the slogan, "I would rather have a poor Netherlands that believes in the Lord of Light than a rich but blasphemous Netherlands." In this round of suppression, tens of thousands of people were hanged and burned at the stake. The gallows floated from the gate of the Duke of the Netherlands castle to 10 miles outside the city. In every city square, every town, and every big tree at the entrance of a village, there are hanged corpses floating in the air. Even among the Dutch nobles who went to the royal capital to petition, the prestigious Earl of Delft and General Godfrey were arrested by the king's generals and beheaded in public on the square for treason. So what do I do? Greet was at a loss. There were a lot of dura mater, subarachnoid space, spinous process, lamina, spinal canal nerves and other stuff tumbling around in his mind, occupying more than 90% of the memory, and he looked a little dull. Is there going to be a war? Do you want me to go to the battlefield? Are you going to organize a field medical corps? Which group of people should I go with? You don't need to go to the battlefield for the time being. The review committee member who came to communicate held him down with laughter and tears. Are you kidding me, letting this person go to the battlefield? Not to mention his status as a legendary disciple, the value he can bring to the rear and in the research position is much greater than being thrown into the battlefield. That's a steady stream of various outputs. Have you ever seen a hen that laid golden eggs slaughtered? You should quickly cure those cases. Once cured, send them to them, or take a look at them when they come. This is our sincerity. Within 10 days, can you cured? It's a bit troublesome. You can't rush this. That half month, 20 days. I will try my best. The visitor leaves satisfied. Before leaving, she turned back to him and lowered her voice and said, "By the way, you'd better make some preparations in advance. You may not go to the battlefield and will only help in the rear, but other people in your mage tower, such as Master Warden, may have to go to the battlefield this time." What? Gretel exploded. He selectively ignored the first half of the sentence and only focused on the second half. Aurora is going to war? I do not know how. When are you leaving? How long will it take to go? What tasks are performed? Follow a large army, or a small group of troops to perform tasks alone? How dangerous is the mission? How many people is he allowed to bring? What is the highest level allowed among these people? Gretel was spinning around. A long list of questions were thrown out like a barrage, and the visitor could only shake his head. I don't know, I really don't know. It's just an intention at the moment. Magicians with combat capabilities within a certain level should take turns to go to the battlefield. I'm just being entrusted by someone to remind you. Gretel was silent. He walked around the hospital and made sure that there were no urgent cases that required his intervention, no surgeries that required his care, and no scientific research problems that required him to answer questions on the spot. He stamped his feet, turned around, and rushed back to the mage tower. Oro! Oro, I heard you are going to the battlefield. Boom! In the distance, deep in the magic practice room, there was a violent explosion. After a long while, Aurora Wharton emerged from the practice room with a face covered in black ash and a head of hair as messy as a bird's nest. Is it still early? The teacher told me that in about 2 months, a wave of people will be organized to go to the battlefield. They will not stay forever. They will go on a few missions at most and come back in 3.5 months. Why is Archmage Carlyle like this? Gretel stamped his feet. He understands the truth. Evocation mages have the strongest combat power and destructive power. There is no reason why they should not go to the battlefield. As the redisciple of the Lord of Thunder, Aurora had no reason to let others rush to the front, so he hid behind. Level 6 mages are already very strong. At the very least, throwing out a bunch of fireballs can blow up an army or destroy a section of a city wall. But Aurora is different from others. Like Brother Lin En, who has experienced hundreds of battles and has rich experience in traveling behind enemy lines. The challenge of leapfrogging is not empty at all. He can just go and he doesn't have to worry at all. Aurora has been doing research in the laboratory since arriving in Nevis and has never left Nevis. When it comes to fighting with people, and when it comes to experience in outdoor adventures, she is worse than him. At the very least, he has been to the Blackgate Peninsula and traveled thousands of miles in the wilderness. Aurora has not even had these experiences. Can you not go? Gretel asked with a glimmer of hope. Aurora shook her head without thinking. It's impossible. The teacher told me that not only me, but all the senior brothers and sisters, including most of the people under the Lord of Thunder, will go on missions in batches, and no one can escape. Besides, he raised his gaze slightly. The blond young man's eyes were bright, looking through the stone wall of the practice room as if he were gazing at the tall Tower of Babel on the top of the mountain. I have been in Nevis for such a long time and have been living and using the Parliament. I should also make some contribution to the Parliament. Gretel was furious. Seeing that Aurora had no intention of changing her mind, he stamped his feet and went directly to Archmage Carlyle. I can't stop you, but I can stop Senior Brother. Let the Senior Brother speak and lock you in the Mage Tower and not be allowed to go to the battlefield. Archmage Carlyle listened to his request with a smile. Then, firmly and without hesitation, he shook his head at his junior brother. No. Why not, just him? It's not that he's the only one missing. But, little Gretel, do you know what the operation of the Parliament is like? Archmage Carlyle waved his hand and a map appeared. The Kingdom of Kent, the Netherlands opposite, the Kingdom of Brolin, the Kingdom of the Rhine further away, and the areas directly under the jurisdiction of the glorious Holy See. Every mage must contribute to the council. Or, guard the mage towers in various places, provide resources for the council, and discover and cultivate young people with magical potential in various places. With a wave of his hand, stars all over the kingdom lit up with many pure white lights. From the royal capital to the county town, and then to every small town, there were dotted mage towers. Or, engage in production, create a large number of magic items, or direct the development of production in various workshops, mines, farms, etc., to provide financial resources for the Parliament. With another wave of his hand, the city of Nevis lit up with golden spots of light, like a flowing river of gold. Or, engage in research work and lead the development direction of magic, even if it is to assist high-level mages in their research. In the city of Nevis, all the major counties and cities, as well as the royal capital, lit up with a blue light. Obviously, in the Archmage's mind, those are the only places that are qualified to say the word research. Of course, there are also a group of magicians who are fighting on the front line against the glorious Holy See. From the border, to the sea, to the Netherlands, and even the hinterland of the continent, a red light lit up shockingly. Greet couldn't help but think that these red lights were the blood and lives of the magicians. On the frontal battlefield, energy evocation mages account for a large part. Our Thunderhorn's position in the council is the result of generations of magicians fighting for it. Gretel was silent. Archmage Carlyle sighed and patted him on the shoulder. Low-level mages, especially young low-level mages, are regarded as training objects by the council and will not easily catch up with the battlefield. But Aurora is an intermediate mage, and he should shoulder his responsibilities. This time, all evocation magicians of level 5 and above, including those in Nevis who receive daily parliamentary allowances, must be prepared to go to the battlefield. Either assisting in defense along the coast, dealing with enemy ships at sea, or going deep into the Netherlands to participate in their military operations. As for which job to undertake, draw lots. According to the level, the direction of the spell, the position of the same kind of mage, and the same kind of needs, the decision will be made by drawing lots. Archmage Carlyle replied expressionlessly. Prepare defenses in advance to eliminate any possibility of cheating, such as leaving marks on the tickets, using spells to control the drawing process, using prophecy spells for clairvoyance. All possibilities are suppressed. Then, under the supervision of the Tower Spirit and the Great Mages, whoever is drawn will be the one who will go to whichever post he is drawn to. Just, fair and open. Gretel was completely speechless. The parliamentary system has reached this point. If he wants to fish Aurora out again, the price he needs to pay is obviously too big for him to pay. Not only could he not afford it, but even the legendary mage might not be able to afford it. That is, at the cost of shaking the conscription system of Parliament, shaking its fairness, and corroding its integrity and vitality. He hung his head in frustration. Archmage Carlyle turned his head helplessly, took a few steps outside, then turned back to him. While there is still time, you should quickly equip him with various equipment and followers, and let him receive combat training. If he really goes to the battlefield, the death caused by lack of experience will be even higher than those caused by being too low in level and lacking in strength. The probability is higher. Greet nodded silently and made up his mind to equip Aurora with the best defensive equipment, the best amplification and concealment equipment, lots of potions and scrolls, and find a few good followers. In terms of physical combat, old Morgan can give him training on how to use magic to fight. Who can he ask for? While he was thinking about it, a faint warning struck him like thunder. By the way, you two, be prepared. Do you think you don't have to go to the battlefield? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Our district has to do nucleic acid tests for 4 more days, I can't help but lie down.